The stack of contracts blurred before my eyes as I blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights of my desk. My lower back throbbed with that deep, persistent ache that had become my constant companion over the past 4 months, the kind that reminded me with every shift in my chair that my body was no longer just my own. I pressed my palm against the small of my spine, trying to find relief, while my other hand instinctively moved to the slight curve of my abdomen, hidden beneath the structured navy blazer I'd carefully selected that morning. Castellano Industries' executive floor hummed with its usual Monday morning energy. Phones rang in distant offices. The espresso machine in the break room hissed and gurgled, and somewhere down the hall, I could hear Teresa from accounting laughing at something her assistant had said. 3 years I'd worked here as executive secretary to the CEO, and I'd learned to read the building's rhythms like a musician reading sheet music. Every sound had meaning. Every silence held weight. My desk sat in the outer office, a strategic buffer between the chaotic world of corporate demands and Paulo Simuse's inner sanctum. Floor-to-ceiling windows behind me offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, but I rarely looked anymore. Instead, I focused on the tangible. The smooth mahogany surface of my desk, the precise arrangement of files in chromatic order, the faint scent of the lemon oil the cleaning crew used every evening. These details grounded me, kept me focused when everything else felt like it was spinning out of control. I'd arrived extra early today, as I had every day for the past 16 weeks, timing my entrance for that quiet hour before the building filled with people who might notice the subtle changes in my appearance. The blazer that now strained slightly across my chest. The way I'd started wearing my honey blonde hair down instead of in my usual sleek bun, because the severe style somehow made my face look fuller. The sensible flats instead of the heels I'd always favored, because my ankles had started swelling by mid-afternoon. Paloma, did you finish reviewing the Nakamura merger documents? Teresa's voice pulled me from my thoughts as she paused by my desk, coffee mug in hand. Her kind brown eyes swept over me with concern. You look tired. Are you feeling all right? I forced a smile, the same practiced expression I'd perfected over these past months. Just a late night finishing those reports. The documents are ready for Mr. Simu's review when he arrives. Teresa nodded, but her gaze lingered a moment too long on my face. She was one of the few people in this building who treated me like a person rather than a fixture, which made lying to her particularly difficult. You know, my sister looked just like you do now when she was pregnant with her first. That same glow mixed with exhaustion. My heart stuttered, but I kept my expression neutral. I think I just need more sleep. Teresa took a sip of her coffee, unconvinced. Well, if you need anything, you know where to find me. As she walked away, I released the breath I'd been holding. This was getting harder. The secret I carried wasn't just the life growing inside me, but the identity of its father. A man who sat 30 feet away behind a solid oak door, who signed my paychecks, who'd spent one impossibly perfect night with me after last year's holiday party, and then pretended it had never happened. December 23rd. That was when it had occurred. The company's annual gala at the Metropolitan Hotel, champagne flowing freely, Christmas lights glittering like captured stars. I'd stayed late helping coordinate the event, as I always did, invisible in my role as the efficient secretary who made everything run smoothly. Paulo had been there too, released for once from the iron control he maintained during business hours, his usually severe expression softened by expensive scotch and the rare holiday cheer. We'd talked, really talked, for the first time in the 3 years I'd worked for him. Not about quarterly reports or shareholder meetings, but about real things. His mother's collection of vintage jazz records. My grandmother's recipe for traditional Portuguese pastries that I'd never quite mastered. The way the city looked from his penthouse, like a universe of possibility spread out below. And then, in his car, his driver dismissed for the night. The partition raised between us and the empty front seat. He'd kissed me. Gentle at first, then desperate, like a man drowning and I was air. We'd ended up at his penthouse, and for 6 perfect hours, I wasn't his secretary. I was just Paloma, and he was just Paolo, and the chemistry we'd both been ignoring for 3 years finally found its release. But then, in the gray light of early morning, as I'd stirred awake in his massive bed, I'd heard him murmur a name. Not mine. Vera, he'd whispered, still half asleep, reaching for me. Vera, his ex-fiancée, the woman he'd been engaged to 5 years ago, the relationship that had ended spectacularly and publicly when she'd been photographed with his business rival. I'd frozen, that single word shattering the fragile fantasy I'd allowed myself to build. By the time he'd fully woken, I was already dressed, already composing my face into professional neutrality. He'd tried to say something, but I'd cut him off with cheerful efficiency. "I'll call a car. See you after the holidays, Mr. Simeus." His eyes had flickered with something I couldn't read, but he'd let me go. And when we'd both returned to the office in January, he'd treated me with the same cool professionalism as always, as if that night had been erased from both our memories. Except I carried the proof that it had happened. The evidence was currently the size of an avocado, according to the pregnancy app I'd secretly downloaded, growing stronger every day inside me. The elevator chimed, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the clock. 8:15. Paolo was early, unusual for a Monday. I straightened in my chair, smoothing my blazer, preparing my professional mask. But it wasn't Paolo who emerged from the elevator. It was Valentim Ferreira, Paolo's stepfather, a man whose silver hair and distinguished features concealed a ruthlessness that made Paolo's occasional coldness seem warm by comparison. At 58, Valentim had the bearing of someone who'd spent decades accumulating power and wasn't about to relinquish any of it. Miss Valentina. His voice was smooth as aged whiskey and just as intoxicating to those who didn't know better. "Is my stepson in yet?" "Not yet, Mr. Ferreira. He's expected within the hour. Would you like to wait in the conference room?" Valentim's pale blue eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Actually, I'd like to leave something in his office. A surprise for when he arrives." Everything in me screamed that this was wrong, but Valentim was on the board of directors, had security clearance, had every right to access Paolo's office. I couldn't refuse without seeming insubordinate. "Of course. Let me unlock it for you." I rose carefully, hyper-aware of my body's new shape, grateful for the blazer's concealing cut. As I moved around my desk to unlock Paolo's door, a wave of dizziness swept over me. Morning sickness, the doctor had said, though mine seemed to strike at random throughout the day. I gripped the edge of my desk, steadying myself. "Are you unwell?" Valentim's voice held a note of predatory interest. "Just stood up too quickly." I managed to cross to Paolo's door and unlock it, stepping aside to let Valentim enter. He disappeared into the office for perhaps 3 minutes, emerging empty-handed, with a satisfied smile that made my stomach clench, for reasons that had nothing to do with pregnancy. "Thank you, my dear. You look lovely today, by the way. Positively glowing." The way he said it made me want to shower. As soon as he was gone, I locked Paolo's door again and returned to my desk, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled over me like a cold fog. 45 minutes later, Paolo arrived. I knew his footsteps, the confident stride of a man who owned everything he surveyed. At 32, he'd transformed his father's modest import business into a multinational empire, and he carried that success in every line of his 6-foot frame. Dark hair, always precisely styled. Gray eyes that missed nothing. A face that could have been carved from marble for all the emotion it usually showed. "Good morning, Mr. Simeus." I kept my eyes on my computer screen, the safest place to look. If I met his gaze, I feared he'd see everything I was hiding. Paloma. Just my name, but something in his tone made me glance up. He was studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read, his briefcase in one hand, the other adjusting his already perfect tie. "You look different today." My heart hammered. "Different how, sir?" "I'm not sure." He continued to stare, and I felt exposed, as if the blazer had become transparent. "Have you changed your hair?" "No, sir. Same as always." He seemed unconvinced, but didn't press. "Hold my calls for the next hour. I have some contracts to review before the 10 o'clock meeting." "Of course." I turned back to my computer as he moved toward his office door. The scream that tore from him 30 seconds later sent ice through my veins. "Paloma, get in here! Now!" I'd never heard that tone from him before. Fury, yes. Impatience, certainly. But this was different. This was rage barely leashed, the kind that made the air itself feel dangerous. I stood on shaking legs and moved to his office, every instinct screaming at me to run instead. Paolo stood behind his massive desk, a small square of photo paper clutched in his fist. His face drained of all color except for 2 spots of red high on his cheekbones. His gray eyes had gone nearly black with emotion. "Explain this." His voice was deadly quiet now, which was somehow worse than the shout. He held up the paper, and my world tilted sideways. The ultrasound. The one I'd hidden in my apartment, tucked away in a drawer where no one would ever find it. Except I'd brought my work bag home last Friday, had grabbed the wrong folder in my exhausted state, had apparently carried the image to work, and then transferred it to Paolo's office when I'd filed documents in his desk drawer on Friday afternoon. And Valentine, somehow, had known to look for it. "I can explain." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Can you?" Paolo moved around the desk with predatory grace, each step measured, controlled. "Because from where I'm standing, this appears to be an ultrasound image, dated 16 weeks ago, with your name on it." He was in front of me now, close enough that I could smell his cologne, that same scent that had surrounded me that December night. Close enough to see the muscle jumping in his jaw, the white-knuckled grip on the paper. "The baby." His voice cracked slightly on the word. "Is it mine?" I could lie, should lie, but looking into his eyes, seeing the barely concealed panic beneath the rage, I found I couldn't. "Yes." The single word detonated between us like a bomb. Paolo staggered back a step, his free hand gripping the edge of his desk. For 5 long seconds he simply stared at me, his chest rising and falling with harsh breaths. Then, quietly, "How long have you known?" "Since February." He repeated it like he was testing the word in a foreign language. "You've known for 4 months that you're carrying my child, and you said nothing." The accusation in his voice sparked my own anger, the emotion I'd been suppressing for 16 weeks. What exactly was I supposed to say, Mr. Simuse? "Good morning. Here are your messages, and by the way, I'm pregnant from that night you pretended never happened." His eyes flashed. "I never pretended. You called me Vera." The words ripped out of me before I could stop them. "That morning you reached for me and called me by your ex-fiancé's name. Then you let me leave, and you've treated me like a piece of office furniture ever since." The color that had drained from his face returned in a rush. "I what? You don't even remember." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Paloma." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't. Just don't." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly freezing despite the office's climate control. "I'm 4 months pregnant with your child, Mr. Simuse. I wasn't trying to trap you or blackmail you or whatever you're thinking. I was trying to handle it quietly, to not complicate your life, because I know what a disaster it would be for the CEO to have a pregnant secretary." "A disaster." He repeated my words, his expression shifting into something I couldn't read. "You think my child is a disaster. I think the situation is complicated. Complicated." Paolo moved suddenly, closing the distance between us in 2 long strides. His hands found my shoulders, not rough but firm, holding me in place. "You're carrying my child. My child. And you were going to what? Hide it? Disappear? Raise my son or daughter alone? I was going to handle it. Tears threatened, and I blinked them back furiously. I would not cry. Not now. Like I handle everything. No. The single word was absolute. No, you're not handling this alone. Not anymore. His phone buzzed on the desk, the 10 o'clock reminder. The meeting with the board, the one Valentine would be attending. The meeting where Paolo's stepfather would undoubtedly have plans for the explosive secret he'd just delivered. Paolo glanced at the phone, then back at me, and in his eyes I saw calculation warring with something that looked almost like fear. We need to talk. Really talk. But first. He released me, moved to his desk and pressed the intercom. Cancel my 10 o'clock. Clear my calendar for the rest of the day. Mr. Simuse, his assistant's voice crackled back. The board meeting... I said cancel it. His tone left no room for argument. When he turned back to me, his expression had shifted into something I recognized. The ruthless focus that had built his empire. Sit down, Paloma. We have 16 weeks to catch up on, and I intend to know every detail. Starting with why you thought protecting me was more important than protecting yourself. The leather chair in Paolo's office had never felt less comfortable. I perched on its edge, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, while he paced before the floor-to-ceiling windows like a caged predator. The city sprawled below us, oblivious to the earthquake happening on the 42nd floor. Start from the beginning. His voice was controlled now, that dangerous calm that meant his mind was working at full capacity. When did you know? I took a breath, organizing my thoughts the way I'd been trained to organize his schedule, his files, his entire professional life. The first week of February, I'd been feeling off for about 10 days, exhausted, nauseous. I thought it was the flu going around the office. But it wasn't. No. My hand drifted unconsciously to my abdomen. I took 3 tests, all positive. Then I went to a doctor to confirm. Paolo stopped pacing, turning to face me fully. The morning light behind him cast his features into shadow, but I could see the rigid set of his shoulders. And you decided not to tell me because I'd said Vera's name. It sounded foolish when he put it like that, reducing 4 months of anguish to a single wounded moment. It wasn't just that. It was everything. The way you avoided eye contact when we returned to work. How you suddenly started having Teresa relay messages instead of speaking to me directly. You made it very clear that night was a mistake you wanted to forget. I was trying to be professional. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its usual perfect order. I'd crossed a line with my employee. I thought maintaining distance was the right thing to do. While I was trying to figure out how to raise a baby on a secretary's salary, the words came out sharper than I'd intended. Do you have any idea what childcare costs in this city? What maternity leave looks like for someone in my position? I've been saving every extra dollar, picking up freelance translation work at night, trying to build enough of a cushion that I could afford to take unpaid leave without losing my apartment. His jaw tightened. You should have told me. Why? So you could write me a check and make the problem go away? I stood, needing to move, needing to not feel so vulnerable sitting while he loomed over me. I've worked for you for 3 years, Paolo. I've seen how you handle complications. You eliminate them. You think I would have asked you to terminate? He couldn't finish the sentence, the horror in his voice genuine. I don't know what you would have done. That's the problem. I moved to the window, keeping several feet between us. I knew you as my boss. I knew you during one night when we were both pretending to be different people. But I didn't know you as a father, as a partner, as someone who'd want this. This. He gestured between us. You mean my child. Our child. The correction was important. Mine first. I'm the one carrying her, feeling her move, watching my body change. I'm the one who'll push her into the world and feed her and wake up at 3 a.m. when she cries. You're her father biologically, but I needed to know if you'd want to be anything more than that before I invited you into this." The silence that followed was heavy with everything unsaid. Paolo stared at me like he was seeing a stranger, and perhaps he was. The efficient, agreeable secretary who anticipated his needs and never caused problems had vanished, replaced by a woman who'd made unilateral decisions about his future. "Her," he said finally, his voice rough. "You said her. We're having a daughter." The vulnerability in the question cracked something in my chest. Yes. The doctor confirmed it at my 16-week appointment. I was going to name her Vittoria. Vittoria. He tested the name, and a strange expression crossed his face. Something soft, wondering. After my grandmother. I hadn't known that. In 3 years of working together, managing his life, I'd never learned his grandmother's name. The realization of how little we truly knew each other, despite our intimacy, settled over me like a weight. His phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. Paolo glanced at it, and his expression hardened. "Valentim is texting. Wants to know why I canceled the board meeting. He knew." The certainty settled in my bones. "He found the ultrasound somehow, put it in your office to create exactly this situation." "But how would he—" Paolo's eyes widened. "Your desk. You filed documents in here Friday afternoon. The ultrasound must have been mixed in with something." "I was so tired," I whispered, horror washing over me. "I wasn't paying attention. I just grabbed the folder and brought everything from home to organize here. I didn't even realize—" "This isn't your fault." Paolo's voice was sharp. "Valentim has been looking for leverage against me since my father died 2 years ago. He wants control of the company, and he'll use anything to get it." The company. Of course. I'd been thinking about our personal crisis while Paolo's mind had already moved to the corporate implications. What will he do with this information? Depends on what serves his purposes best. Paolo began pacing again, but this time it was strategic, calculating. If he can use it to paint me as reckless, unprofessional, someone who impregnates his employees and tries to hide it, he could move for a vote of no confidence with the board. My stomach turned. I could resign, quietly. We could say the baby isn't yours, that I'm involved with someone else. No. The word cracked like a whip. Absolutely not. I won't have my daughter's existence denied, or my child labeled illegitimate because of corporate politics. Then what do we do? He stopped pacing, turning to face me with an expression I'd seen countless times in negotiations. The moment when he'd identified his strategy and was about to deploy it. "You move into my building. The penthouse floor has several apartments. You'll take the one adjacent to mine." "What?" "No. Paolo, I have my own place. That's a 40-minute commute from here, in a neighborhood where I've seen the crime statistics." His tone brooked no argument. "You're carrying my daughter. You'll live somewhere safe, with security, with immediate access to medical care if needed. You're trying to control this situation like it's a business deal. I'm trying to protect what's mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have angered me. Instead, it sent an unwelcome flutter through my chest. "I'm not yours to protect. Our daughter is." He moved closer, and I found myself backing against the window. "And whether you like it or not, that means protecting you too. Valentim finding out about the pregnancy changes everything. He'll be watching you now, looking for vulnerabilities. Living in my building puts you under the same security protocols that protect me." "As what? Your secret pregnant secretary hidden away in a convenient apartment?" "As the mother of my child." His hand rose as if to touch my face, then fell away. "I know I have no right to ask for your trust. I called you by another woman's name and let you walk away without fighting for you. But I'm asking now. Move into the apartment. Let me ensure you're safe. Everything else we can figure out as we go." There was logic in his proposal, cold and practical as everything Paolo did, but there was also something else in his eyes. something that looked almost like desperation. I need to think about it. You have until end of business today. He was already moving back to his desk, pulling out his phone. I'm having security upgraded immediately, and I'm moving up the quarterly board meeting to address the situation before Valentin can weaponize it. Address it how? By acknowledging it publicly on my terms rather than letting him reveal it on his. Paolo's fingers flew across his phone screen. I'll inform the board that my executive secretary and I are expecting a child, that we're handling the situation responsibly, and that it in no way impacts my ability to lead this company. Horror washed over me. Paolo, you can't just announce my pregnancy to the board of directors without my consent. I'm not announcing your pregnancy. I'm announcing my impending fatherhood. His eyes met mine, steel gray and unyielding. You can be present for the meeting or not. That's your choice. But I won't allow Valentin to control this narrative. This isn't just about narrative control. This is my life, my body, my privacy, which Valentin has already violated by going through my office. Paolo set his phone down with deliberate care. I understand you want autonomy, but the moment that ultrasound appeared on my desk, we lost the luxury of handling this privately. Now we control the message, or Valentin does. Those are the only options. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was being high-handed and presumptuous. But 3 years of working in corporate law had taught me he was right. In the world of business warfare, the first person to define the story usually won. Fine, I'll attend the board meeting, but I'm speaking too. Surprise flickered across his face. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I straightened, channeling every ounce of professional composure I'd cultivated. If we're doing this publicly, then I'm not hiding. I'm not ashamed of this baby, and I won't be treated like some scandal you're managing. For the first time since finding the ultrasound, Paolo smiled. It was small, barely there, but genuine. Agreed. The meeting is Thursday at 2. That gives us 3 days to prepare. And the apartment? The offer stands regardless of your decision. He returned his attention to his phone, but not before I caught the flash of hope in his expression. But I'd sleep better knowing you and Vittoria were safe. Vittoria. Hearing him say our daughter's name did something dangerous to my resolve. I needed distance, space to think clearly without his overwhelming presence clouding my judgment. I need to get back to my desk. Teresa will be wondering where I am. Paloma. He looked up as I reached the door. For what it's worth, I never forgot that night. I thought about it every single day. I just convinced myself that acting on it again would be taking advantage of the power dynamic between us. The confession hung in the air between us, vulnerable and honest in a way Paolo rarely allowed himself to be. I didn't know what to say, so I simply nodded and escaped to the relative safety of my desk. Teresa appeared within minutes, concern etched on her face. Is everything all right? I heard raised voices. It's complicated. I sank into my chair, exhaustion washing over me. The baby is his, isn't it? Teresa's voice was gentle, knowing. Mr. Simus's. There was no point denying it now. Yes. Oh, honey. She perched on the edge of my desk. How are you holding up? I don't know. The honesty felt like a relief. 4 hours ago, this was my secret to manage. Now he knows. His stepfather knows. And apparently the entire board of directors is going to know by Thursday. Teresa's expression darkened. Valentin Ferreira knows? That's dangerous. Why? Because that man has been trying to push Paolo out since the day his mother married him. He's already got 3 board members in his pocket, maybe 4. Teresa lowered her voice. There's been talk about a vote of no confidence. Valentin's been building a case that Paolo is too young, too reckless, too focused on expansion instead of stability. And a pregnant secretary is perfect ammunition for that argument. Exactly. Teresa squeezed my hand. But Paolo's smart. If anyone can outmaneuver Valentin, it's him. I wanted to believe that, but I'd also seen what corporate warfare did to the people caught in its crossfire. Careers destroyed, reputations ruined, lives upended. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hope you're taking care of yourself and that baby. It would be unfortunate if anything happened to either of you. The message was unsigned, but the implied threat was clear. I showed it to Teresa, whose face went pale. You need to tell Paolo. I need to go home. Panic was rising in my chest, making it hard to breathe. I need to think. You need to stay where there's security. Teresa was already moving toward Paolo's door. I'm getting him. No, Teresa, don't. But she was already knocking, already pushing inside. I heard her urgent whisper, then Paolo's sharp curse. He emerged from his office with Teresa behind him, his face a mask of controlled fury. Show me. I handed him my phone. He read the message twice, his jaw progressively tightening, then made a call. Marco, it's Simeus. I need a full security detail on Paloma Valentina, effective immediately. Yes, my executive secretary. No, not standard protocol. Treat it as a level 1 threat. She doesn't go anywhere without protection. Paolo, you're overreacting. Someone just threatened my pregnant employee via text message. His eyes were chips of ice. That's not overreaction. That's appropriate response. You're not going home tonight. You're coming to my penthouse where I know you'll be safe. I haven't agreed to move into your building. I'm not asking you to move in. I'm insisting you stay tonight while we assess the threat level. He was already texting someone else. Tomorrow we'll discuss long-term arrangements. But tonight you're under my protection whether you like it or not. You can't just order me around like I'm one of your employees. You are one of my employees, and more importantly, you're carrying my child. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. I already failed to protect you once by letting you leave that morning without fighting for you. I won't make that mistake again. Valentine wants to use you to get to me, which means you're in danger. Accept my help or I'll have security carry you to the car. Your choice. The autocratic certainty in his voice should have infuriated me. Instead, looking at the genuine fear beneath his controlled exterior, I found myself nodding. One night. Tomorrow we talk about this properly. Agreed. Relief flickered across his face. I'll have Marco prepare the guest suite. And Paloma? He waited until I met his eyes. I know you don't trust me yet, but I promise you anyone who threatens you or our daughter will regret it. The cold promise in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. This was the Paolo Simeus the business world feared, the ruthless CEO who destroyed competitors and consolidated power. And for the first time, that ruthlessness was aimed at protecting me. I wasn't sure if that made me safer or put me in even more danger. Paolo's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building, a sprawling space of glass, steel, and minimalist luxury that felt more like a museum than a home. Marco, his head of security, had escorted me up the private elevator with professional courtesy that couldn't quite mask his curiosity about why the boss's secretary was receiving level 1 protection protocols. The guest suite is fully stocked, Marco informed me as we stepped into the marble foyer. Mr. Simeus asked that you make yourself comfortable. He'll be up shortly after he finishes securing the office. Thank you. I stood awkwardly with my purse, having nothing else since I hadn't gone home to pack. The realization that I'd sleep in borrowed clothes, in a strange place, under guard because of a threatening text message, felt surreal. Marco's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me with an expression that looked almost sympathetic. The boss says to tell you the closet in the guest room has appropriate clothing. His assistant had items delivered while we were in transit. Of course, Paolo had thought of everything. The man who planned corporate acquisitions months in advance wasn't going to leave my wardrobe to chance. Is there anything else you need, Miss Valentina? Privacy would be nice. The words came out sharper than intended, exhaustion and stress fraying my usual politeness. Marco nodded without offense. I'll be stationed outside the penthouse entrance. If you need anything, press 9 on any house phone. When he left, I finally allowed myself to look around properly. The space was beautiful in an austere way, all clean lines and expensive materials. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a 360-degree view of the city as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. The furniture was modern, comfortable but impersonal. Nothing on the walls except abstract art that probably cost more than my annual salary. No photographs, no personal mementos, nothing that revealed who Paulo Simões was when he wasn't being the CEO. Except in one corner, on a built-in shelf, sat a vintage record player and a collection of albums. I moved closer, recognizing the names: Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, Miles Davis. His mother's jazz collection. The one he'd mentioned that December night when we'd still been pretending this was just two people talking. I pulled out a Billie Holiday album, studying the worn cover. Someone had loved this music, played these records until they'd become treasures through repetition. The thought of Paulo sitting here alone, listening to his mother's favorite songs, created an ache in my chest. She played that one when she was sad. I spun around to find Paulo standing in the doorway, his jacket and tie removed, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked more approachable like this, more like the man I'd spent that one night with. I didn't hear you come in. You were absorbed. He moved into the room with that controlled grace that made him seem like he was always in motion, even when standing still. My mother believed music could heal almost anything. Heartbreak, grief, disappointment. She had a record for every emotion. What did she play when she was happy? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Ella. Always Ella. The intimacy of the moment felt dangerous, like we were slipping back into that space where we'd forgotten who we were supposed to be to each other. I carefully returned the album to its place. The guest room? This way. He led me down a hallway lined with more abstract art, stopping at a door near the end. There's an ensuite bathroom, and the closet should have everything you need. If it doesn't, call Marco and he'll arrange it. The guest room was larger than my entire apartment, decorated in soft grays and creams. The bed looked like something from a luxury hotel, piled with pillows, and covered in what I suspected was Egyptian cotton. Through an open door, I could see the bathroom, all marble and gleaming fixtures. This is too much. It's a guest room. Paulo leaned against the doorframe, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. I have 3 of them. This one is barely used. I moved to the closet, finding it stocked with maternity clothes in my exact size. Soft fabrics, muted colors, the kind of expensive casual wear I'd never thought to own. How did you know my size? I pay attention. The admission was quiet. You've been wearing larger sizes for the past 2 months. Blazers that don't quite button. Skirts with elastic waists. I notice everything about you, Paloma. I always have. The confession should have felt invasive. Instead, it made something warm unfold in my chest. Then you knew I was pregnant before today. I suspected, but I told myself I was imagining things. That it was impossible. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I rarely saw from him. I've been lying to myself for months. About the pregnancy. About why I can't stop thinking about you. About what I really want. What do you want? He was across the room before I could blink, close enough that I could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes. The truth? I want to go back to that December night and do everything differently. I want to wake up with you in my arms and say your name, not hers. I want to have known about Vittoria from the moment you did. I want... He stopped, jaw clenching. I want things I have no right to ask for. My hand found my belly, a protective gesture that had become instinct. Like what? Like you. Here. Not as my employee or the mother of my child, but as someone who chose to be with me. His voice was rough, vulnerable in a way I'd never heard. But I destroyed that possibility when I let you walk away. The old hurt rose up, sharp and familiar. You called me Vera. I know. He closed his eyes briefly. I've replayed that morning 1,000 times. I was half asleep, dreaming about the past, and her name came out. But the moment I fully woke and realized it was you beside me, that we'd finally stopped fighting what we both felt, I was terrified. Of what? Of how much I wanted you. His eyes opened, pinning me in place. You worked for me. I had power over your career, your income, your future. Getting involved with you was every kind of wrong professionally. So I convinced myself that maintaining distance was the ethical thing to do, even though it was killing me. While I was convincing myself, you regretted the entire night. Never. The word was fierce. I've regretted many things in my life, Paloma. That night with you isn't one of them. Letting you leave without fighting for you is... I wanted to believe him. Wanted to let go of the hurt I'd been carrying, and accept that maybe we'd both made mistakes. But 4 months of fear and planning and struggling alone couldn't be erased by pretty words. What about Vera? The question came out smaller than I'd intended. Do you still love her? No. No hesitation, no doubt. What I felt for Vera was young and intense, and ultimately shallow. She wanted the power and prestige of being Mrs. Paulo Simu. I wanted someone who made me feel less alone. We were using each other, and when she cheated with my competitor, it hurt my pride more than my heart. And me? What do you want from me? He reached up slowly, giving me time to pull away, and cupped my face in his hands. His palms were warm, slightly rough, and the tenderness in the gesture made my breath catch. Everything. I want everything with you, but I'll settle for whatever you're willing to give. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, and I realized I was crying. When had that started? I'm so tired of being afraid. Then let me help carry it. He leaned his forehead against mine, and we stood like that, breathing the same air. Move into the apartment next door, not as my prisoner or my kept woman, but as my partner in raising our daughter. Let me support you financially, so you're not picking up translation work at midnight when you should be sleeping. Let me be there for doctor's appointments and midnight cravings, and all the things I've already missed. What about work? I can't keep being your secretary if everyone knows we're together. Then don't be my secretary. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. I need a chief of staff, someone to manage the executive team and coordinate major projects. The salary is triple what you make now, the work is challenging, and you'd report to the board, not me. It eliminates the power dynamic issue. You're offering me a promotion? I'm offering you the job you've been doing unofficially for the past year. A hint of a smile touched his lips. You think I don't know you've been managing my entire executive team? That you're the one who actually runs this company while I handle the high-level strategy? Teresa told me months ago that I should promote you. But I was afraid if I changed our professional dynamic, I'd lose the one excuse I had to see you every day. The admission was so unexpected, so vulnerable, that I didn't know how to respond. The Paulo I thought I knew didn't admit fear or dependence. But this man, standing in a guest room with his guard finally down, was someone different. Someone real. I need time. The words felt inadequate. To think, to process everything that's happened today. Take all the time you need. He stepped back, and I immediately missed his warmth. But the threat against you is real. Valentin doesn't make idle statements. Until we know what he's planning, please stay here where security can protect you. Just tonight. We'll talk about it tomorrow. He moved toward the door, then paused. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry. Help yourself to anything. And Paloma? He looked back, something uncertain in his expression. Thank you for telling me the truth. I know it wasn't easy. After he left, I sank onto the edge of the bed, my mind spinning. In the span of 12 hours, my entire life had been upended. The secret I'd guarded so carefully was exposed. The man I'd convinced myself didn't care had just offered me everything I'd been afraid to want. And somewhere in the city, Paulo's stepfather was planning his next move. I pulled out my phone, staring at the threatening text message. Hope you're taking care of yourself and that baby." The false concern made my skin crawl. Whoever sent this wanted me afraid, wanted me vulnerable. But I'd been afraid for 4 months, and it had gotten me nowhere. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. I texted Paulo, "I'll take the apartment and the job. But we do this my way, on my terms. Partners, not owner and possession." His response came within seconds. "Partners, I swear it. Thank you for trusting me." I wasn't sure I did trust him, not completely. But I trusted that he wanted to protect our daughter. And for now, that would have to be enough. The sound of music drifted down the hallway, soft and melancholy. Billie Holiday, singing about love and loss and longing. I followed it to find Paulo in the living room, standing by the windows with a glass of whiskey, the record player spinning its vintage magic. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked from the doorway. He turned, surprise flickering across his face. "I thought you'd be resting. Too much on my mind." I moved into the room, drawn by the music and the vulnerable line of his shoulders. "What was your mother like?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He took a sip of his drink before answering. "Strong. She had to be. Married to my father. He was brilliant in business but difficult in life. She balanced him, kept him human. You miss her." "Every day." He set down his glass and moved to the record player, carefully lifting the needle. "She died when I was 25. Cancer. I'd just started working at the company, learning the business from my father. 6 months after her funeral, he married Valentine's mother, a woman he'd been seeing in secret for years. The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. He cheated on your mother? For the last 5 years of their marriage." Paulo's hands clenched into fists. "My mother knew. She never said anything. But I'd see her playing these records, crying when she thought I wasn't watching. When she got sick, she made me promise to take care of the company, to not let my father's mistakes destroy what she'd helped him build. And then he married Valentine's mother. Within the year, she died 2 years later, and suddenly, Valentine was my stepbrother, with a seat on the board and ambitions to take over everything my mother had protected. He turned to face me. That's why I can't let him win. Not just because it's my company, but because it would betray her memory. I understood then why Paulo had built such high walls around himself. He'd watched his mother suffer in silence, had seen weakness exploited and loyalty betrayed. No wonder he struggled to let anyone close. "She'd be proud of you," I said softly. "Not just for protecting the company, but for wanting to be there for your daughter." Something in his expression cracked. "I don't know how to do this. Be a father. I had a terrible example. Neither do I. Be a mother." I moved closer, drawn by his vulnerability. "But we'll figure it out together. For Vittoria." "For Vittoria," he repeated. And the tenderness in his voice when he said our daughter's name made my heart ache. We stood there in the dimness, the city lights painting shadows across the floor, and I felt the first fragile threads of something new beginning to form between us. Not love, not yet, but partnership, trust, the foundation of something that might, with time and care, become more. "Play another record," I said impulsively. "One of your mother's happy ones." Paulo's smile was small but genuine. "Any requests?" "Surprise me." He selected an album with careful hands, and soon Ella Fitzgerald's voice filled the space, bright and joyful. Paulo extended his hand to me. "Dance with me." "I'm 4 months pregnant and exhausted. Just one song, then I'll let you rest." I took his hand, and he pulled me close but carefully, mindful of my belly between us. We swayed to the music, not quite dancing, just moving together in the quiet dark. "This could work," I whispered against his shoulder. "If we're honest with each other." "Then I'll be honest." His arms tightened fractionally. "I'm terrified of losing you again, of failing our daughter, of becoming my father." "You won't." You're already better than him by wanting to be present. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But you can't protect us from everything, Paulo. Some threats we'll have to face together. Then we faced them together. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, gentle and reverent. Starting with Valentim. The board meeting was in 3 days. Whatever storm was coming, we'd have to weather it as partners. For Vittoria. And maybe, eventually, for us. The apartment next to Paulo's penthouse was smaller, but no less luxurious. A 2-bedroom space with modern furnishings and the same breathtaking views. Over the next 3 days, I moved my life in stages. Clothes, books, the few personal items I'd accumulated in my tiny rental. Teresa helped, chattering cheerfully about nursery furniture and baby names, while I tried not to think about how quickly my independence was dissolving. You're doing the right thing, she assured me for the 100th time as we unpacked kitchen supplies I'd never owned before. That apartment you had was barely safe for you, let alone a baby. I know. I arranged expensive cookware and expensive cabinets, feeling like an imposter. It's just strange having someone else solve my problems. It's called accepting help. You should try it more often. Teresa gave me a knowing look. Besides, Paulo's not solving your problems. He's taking responsibility for his part in creating them. She wasn't wrong. In the 72 hours since the ultrasound revelation, Paulo had been almost obsessively present. He'd attended my rescheduled doctor's appointment, sitting quietly while Dr. Carvalho explained Vittoria's development. He'd asked intelligent questions about nutrition and prenatal vitamins. He'd even downloaded pregnancy apps on his phone, approaching impending fatherhood with the same thorough research he applied to corporate acquisitions. But he'd also maintained careful distance, respecting the boundaries I'd set. We were partners in this, nothing more. The heated moment by the record player remained singular, unmentioned, as we focused on the practical realities of co-parenting. The board meeting loomed like a storm on the horizon. Thursday at 2. Paulo had spent hours preparing his statement, running through responses to possible objections. I'd drafted my own remarks, determined to speak my truth regardless of how the board reacted. You're nervous, Teresa observed, watching me rearrange the same set of plates for the 3rd time. Terrified. I abandoned the pretense of organizing. What if they fire me? What if this ruins Paulo's reputation so badly that Valentim gets what he wants? Then you fight. Teresa's voice was firm. You're stronger than you think, Paloma. I've watched you manage an entire executive floor for 3 years. You can handle a room full of corporate sharks. I wished I had her confidence. The threatening text message haunted me, though no others had followed. Marco's security team had traced it to a burner phone, untraceable, abandoned after that single use. Professional, calculated. Exactly what I'd expect from someone like Valentim Ferreira. My phone buzzed. Paulo, are you settled? Need anything? I smiled despite my anxiety. He texted constantly now, checking in, making sure I was comfortable. It should have felt suffocating, but instead it felt like care. All set. Teresa's been helpful. Good. Don't forget to eat lunch. You barely touched breakfast. Teresa peered over my shoulder, reading the message, and grinned. That man is smitten. He's concerned about his daughter's health. Keep telling yourself that. She gathered her purse, preparing to leave. I need to get back to the office, but call me if you need anything. And Paloma, you've got this. After she left, I stood in the center of my new living room, taking in the reality of my changed circumstances. High-rise luxury, 24-hour security, a job promotion that would triple my salary, the support of a man who'd gone from pretending our night together never happened to rearranging his entire life around our daughter. It felt like a fairy tale, which made me deeply suspicious. Fairy tales didn't happen to ordinary secretaries from ordinary backgrounds. There had to be a cost, a price I hadn't yet identified. The intercom buzzed, startling me from my thoughts. Miss Valentina? Marco's voice, professionally neutral. You have a visitor, a Ms. Vera Santos. She says it's urgent. Vera, Paolo's ex-fiancée, the woman whose name had shattered my illusions that December morning. What could she possibly want? Send her up. I had perhaps 90 seconds to compose myself before the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found a woman who looked like she'd stepped from a fashion magazine. Tall, elegant, with dark hair styled in a sleek bob, and eyes that assessed me with calculating interest. She wore a cream designer dress that probably cost more than my former month's rent, and her smile was perfectly polished and completely cold. You must be Paloma. I've heard so much about you. Her tone suggested she'd heard nothing good. May I come in? Every instinct screamed to refuse, but curiosity won. I stepped aside, allowing her into the apartment. Vera's gaze swept the space with practiced efficiency, cataloging, judging. Lovely place. Paolo always did have excellent taste in real estate. She settled onto the sofa without invitation, crossing her legs with calculated grace. I suppose congratulations are in order. I hear you're expecting. What do you want? Ms. Santos? Direct. I appreciate that. She opened her designer clutch and withdrew a folder. I want to offer you a way out of the mess you've gotten yourself into. I'm not in a mess. Aren't you? Her smile sharpened. A secretary pregnant by her boss, about to be paraded before a board of directors who'll judge every aspect of your character and find you lacking. Do you really think Paolo will stand by you when his company is on the line? When his stepfather forces him to choose between his empire and his employee? I'm not just his employee. I'm the mother of his child. Oh, sweet girl. Vera's laugh was like breaking glass. You think that matters? You think Paolo Simaos, who spent 5 years building himself into the most ruthless CEO in the industry, is going to sacrifice everything for a child he didn't plan and a woman he barely knows? The words hit harder than they should have, finding every doubt I'd been suppressing. You don't know anything about us. I know Paolo better than anyone. She leaned forward, her expression almost pitying. I was engaged to him. I've seen what he's capable of when his power is threatened. He'll protect that company over everything else, including you and that baby. Then why are you here? To offer you an alternative. She slid the folder across the coffee table. Inside is a contract. Sign it, and you'll receive $5 million. Enough to raise your child comfortably anywhere in the world. All you have to do is disappear before tomorrow's board meeting. My hands shook as I picked up the folder, flipping it open to see pages of legal text and a number that made my vision blur. $5 million. More money than I'd earn in several lifetimes. Financial security for Vittoria and me. Who's paying for this? You. Does it matter? Vera's expression remained neutral. You get what you need. Paolo keeps his company. Everyone wins. Except Vittoria loses her father. She'll never know the difference if you leave now. Vera stood, smoothing her dress. Think about it, Paloma. What can Paolo really offer you? A life in his shadow? Always wondering if he's with you because he wants to be, or because he feels obligated? Your daughter growing up watching her parents pretend to be something they're not? Each word was a precision strike, targeting insecurities I'd been trying to ignore. Get out. I'll leave the contract. You have until tomorrow at noon to decide. Vera moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you're brave to try this. But Paolo destroys everything he touches eventually. It's what makes him successful. Don't let yourself and your child be collateral damage. After she left, I sat staring at the contract, Vera's words echoing in my mind. $5 million. Freedom from corporate politics and board meetings, and the constant fear of being found lacking. The chance to raise Vittoria away from the dangerous world Paolo inhabited, but also raising her without her father, never knowing if what Paolo and I were building could become real. Walking away from the partnership we'd just begun to forge. My phone buzzed. Paolo. Valentin just called. He's bringing Vera to tomorrow's meeting as his guest. He's planning something. We need to talk. Of course, Vera wasn't here on her own initiative. This was Valentim's move, his attempt to divide and conquer, get me to run, eliminate the pregnancy scandal, and remove Paolo's motivation to fight for control of the company. I took a photo of the contract and sent it to Paolo with one word: received. His response was immediate. Don't sign anything. I'm coming over. He appeared at my door 5 minutes later, still in his work clothes, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. Let me see it. I handed him the folder. He read through it methodically, his expression growing progressively darker. When he finished, he set it on the counter with controlled precision. 5 million. That's Valentim's valuation of making us disappear. His voice was deadly calm. Did you consider it? The honest answer would hurt him, but we'd promised truth. Yes, for about 30 seconds, something flickered in his eyes. What changed your mind? Vittoria deserves to know her father, and I deserve to make my own choices, not have them bought. I moved closer, needing him to understand. I'm not saying this will be easy, or that I'm ready to trust you completely, but I won't let Valentim make me run out of fear. Paolo's hand found my face, tilting it up so I had to meet his gaze. He's going to destroy us tomorrow. You know that, right? He'll use Vera to paint me as a serial seducer of employees. He'll question your morality, your fitness to work in a professional environment. It's going to be brutal. Then we face it together. I covered his hand with mine. Partners, remember? Partners. He leaned his forehead against mine. I don't deserve you. No, you don't, but you're stuck with me anyway. I tried for levity, but my voice cracked. Paolo, I'm terrified. Me too. The admission was soft. I'm terrified of failing you, of failing Vittoria, of becoming so focused on winning against Valentim that I lose what actually matters. Then don't. Tomorrow, when we're in that boardroom, remember why we're fighting. Not for the company or your reputation, but for her. I placed his hand over my belly, where Vittoria was currently doing gymnastics. Feel that? His eyes widened as our daughter kicked against his palm. She's strong. She's a fighter, like her father. I held his hand there, letting him feel the reality of what we'd created. Whatever happens tomorrow, she deserves parents who show up for her. That's all we have to do. Show up and tell the truth. The truth. He was still focused on my belly, wonder replacing the tension in his features. That I got my secretary pregnant after a single night together, called her by my ex's name, and then ignored the situation for months? That you made mistakes but you're trying to fix them? That we're building a partnership based on respect and shared responsibility? That our daughter wasn't planned but she's already loved? I squeezed his hand. The board can judge us all they want. We know what we're doing is right. Paolo looked up then, and the intensity in his gaze stole my breath. When this is over, when Valentim has been dealt with, and the company is secure, I want to take you to dinner. A real date, not a corporate function or a business discussion. Just you and me, learning who we are outside of all this. I'd like that. And Paloma? He pulled back slightly. No matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what Valentim or Vera or anyone else says, you and Vittoria are my priority. The company is important, but you're irreplaceable. I wanted to believe him, needed to believe him. Prove it tomorrow. I will. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, gentle and full of promise. Get some rest. Tomorrow we go to war. After he left, I sat for a long time with my hand on my belly, feeling Vittoria move beneath my palm. Tomorrow would change everything. Either Paolo would prove that his commitment to us was real, or Valentim would tear apart everything we were trying to build. But tonight, in the quiet dark, I let myself believe in the possibility of more, of partnership becoming something deeper, of a family formed not through perfection, but through choosing each other despite the complications. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of Vera's contract. Then I wrote across it in bold letters, Not for sale. I sent it to Paolo with the message, "See you tomorrow, partner." His response came immediately. "Thank you for choosing us. Us." The words settled around my heart like a promise. Tomorrow would test if that promise could survive the fire. But tonight, I chose to hope. The boardroom of Simuse Industries occupied the entire 45th floor, a space designed to intimidate with its floor-to-ceiling windows, massive oval table, and leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's cars. I'd been in this room countless times as Paolo's secretary, taking notes, managing presentations, remaining invisible while powerful people made decisions that affected thousands of lives. Today, I walked in as something else entirely. The subject of discussion, the scandal to be addressed, the pregnant woman who disrupted the careful corporate order. Teresa had helped me dress that morning, selecting a dove gray maternity dress that was professional but didn't hide my condition. "Own it," she'd advised. "Walk in there like you belong, because you do." Now, standing in the doorway with Paolo's hand at the small of my back, I fought the urge to flee. The board members were already assembled, 12 faces that ranged from curious to openly hostile. Valentin sat at the far end of the table, his expression one of predatory satisfaction. And beside him, perfectly coiffed and smugly confident, sat Vera Santos. "Gentlemen, Ms. Carvalho." Paolo's voice was steady as he guided me to 2 chairs positioned deliberately at the head of the table. "Thank you for accommodating this emergency session. I know your time is valuable. We're all quite curious about why we were summoned with such urgency." This from Henrik Duarte, the company's CFO and one of Valentin's known allies. His eyes flickered to me, assessment clear. Though I believe we can all guess. Then let's not waste time with speculation. Paolo remained standing, his hand still warm on my shoulder. "I've asked you here to address a personal matter that has corporate implications. Paloma Valentina, my executive secretary for the past 3 years, is 4 months pregnant with my child." The silence that followed was absolute. Several board members exchanged glances. Ms. Carvalho, the only woman on the board and the company's general counsel, leaned forward with sharp interest. Valentin's smile widened. "I see." Henrik steepled his fingers. "And you felt this warranted an emergency board meeting because I won't have rumors and speculation damage this company or Ms. Valentina's reputation." Paolo's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "The situation is straightforward. We had a relationship that resulted in pregnancy. We're handling it responsibly and professionally." "Responsibly?" Valentin's voice dripped with false concern. "You've gotten your secretary pregnant, Paolo. That's a clear abuse of power, a violation of company ethics policies, grounds for nothing." Paolo cut him off. "Paloma and I were both consenting adults. Our relationship, brief as it was, occurred outside of work hours and had no impact on her professional performance or advancement. In fact, I'm announcing today that she's being promoted to chief of staff, reporting directly to the board rather than to me, eliminating any conflict of interest." This caused a stir. Ms. Carvalho made a note on her tablet, her expression thoughtful. Henrik looked skeptical. Valentin's smile faded slightly. "How convenient." Vera spoke for the first time, her voice honey-sweet and poisonous. "The secretary gets pregnant and suddenly she's promoted to a position that pays triple her current salary. That doesn't look like ethics compliance, Paolo. It looks like hush money. Ms. Santos." Paolo's voice dropped several degrees. "You're here as Valentin's guest, not as a member of this board. Your opinion on personnel decisions is neither requested nor relevant. But my experience with your pattern of behavior is..." Vera stood, moving around the table with practiced grace. "Shall I tell them, Paolo? About how you pursued me when I worked in your marketing department 5 years ago? How you showered me with gifts and promotions before proposing? How you created exactly this same situation?" My stomach clenched. Paolo had said Vera worked for a different company when they met, not for him. the way his jaw tightened suggested there was truth in her accusation. Vera was never my employee, Paolo said carefully. She was a consultant for an external agency we contracted. Our relationship began after her contract with us ended. A technicality you're conveniently repeating. Vera's smile was sharp. The pattern is clear, gentlemen. Paolo Simus targets women in subordinate positions, seduces them, and when it becomes inconvenient, he discards them. I was lucky enough to escape with just a broken heart. Ms. Valentina is carrying the evidence of his latest conquest. The room erupted in murmured conversation. Henrik looked triumphant. Ms. Carvalho's expression was unreadable. I felt my face burning, rage and humiliation warring in my chest. That's a lie. The words came out stronger than I expected. Every head turned toward me. I don't know what happened between you and Paolo 5 years ago, Ms. Santos, but I know what happened between us. I know he's not perfect, that we both made mistakes. But I'm not some helpless victim of seduction, and I won't let you paint me as one. Then what are you? Valentin leaned forward, his voice gentle and deadly. A secretary who slept with her boss and got pregnant. That's the generous interpretation. The less generous one is that you deliberately entrapped a wealthy CEO. I did no such thing. I stood, my hands gripping the back of my chair. I'm a woman who spent one night with a man I cared about. We both thought it was a mistake afterward. We both tried to move on professionally. When I discovered I was pregnant, I made the choice to continue the pregnancy without telling him because I didn't want to complicate his life or feel obligated to be with me. How noble. Valentin's sarcasm was thick. And yet here you are, moved into his building, promoted to a position you're unqualified for, presenting yourself as his partner. That doesn't sound like someone who wanted to avoid complication. The complication found her anyway. Paolo's hand found my shoulder again, grounding. When I discovered Paloma was pregnant, I insisted on taking responsibility. The promotion is based on merit. She's been functionally performing the chief of staff role for over a year. I'm simply formalizing what should have been acknowledged long ago. And the living arrangement? Henrik pressed. She's living in your building now. That sends a clear message about the nature of your relationship. The message is that I'm protecting the mother of my child from threats. Paolo's voice hardened. Someone sent Ms. Valentina a threatening text message 3 days ago. Someone who knew about her pregnancy before this meeting. Someone who wanted to intimidate her into disappearing. He pulled out his phone and projected the message onto the boardroom screen. Hope you're taking care of yourself and that baby. It would be unfortunate if anything happened to either of you. Ms. Carvalho's expression shifted to concern. That's clearly a threat. Has this been reported to authorities? Security is investigating. Paolo's gaze swept the room, landing on Valentin with pointed intensity. But it became clear that Ms. Valentina needed protection, which is why she's living in my building under 24-hour security. You're implying one of us sent this threat? Valentin's voice was dangerous. That's a serious accusation, Paolo. I'm stating facts. Someone with knowledge of the pregnancy sent a threat. The only people who knew before today were myself, Ms. Valentina, and whoever went through my office to plant her ultrasound on my desk. Paolo turned to face his stepfather directly. Would you like to tell the board where you were last Monday morning, Valentin? The room went silent. Valentin's expression remained calm, but I saw the calculation behind his eyes. I visited your office to leave documents. Your secretary let me in. If I happened to see personal items you'd left carelessly on your desk, that's hardly my fault. Personal items that were in a locked drawer. Paolo's smile was cold. A drawer you had no authorization to open. That's corporate espionage, Valentin. Grounds for removal from the board. That's absurd. But Valentin's confidence had cracked slightly. You're inventing conspiracy theories to distract from your own misconduct. Am I? Paolo pressed a button on the conference table, and a new image appeared on the screen. Security footage showing Valentin entering Paolo's office, moving directly to the desk, picking the lock on the drawer, and removing a folder. This is from our upgraded security system, installed last year after we had that issue with industrial espionage. Every action in executive offices is now recorded and time-stamped. The footage was damning. Valentim's face had gone ashen. Henrik looked between his ally and the screen, clearly reassessing his position. You were looking for leverage against me, Paolo continued, his voice deadly calm. You found Paloma's ultrasound and decided to weaponize it. You encouraged Vera to offer her money to disappear. You sent the threatening text to frighten her into taking that offer. All so you could paint me as reckless and unprofessional, create a vote of no confidence, and seize control of the company my mother built. Your mother's company? Valentim found his voice, though it shook with rage. Your father built Simuse Industries from nothing. Your mother was a housewife who collected jazz records and interfered in business she didn't understand. The insult hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Paolo's expression went absolutely cold, and for the first time, I saw the ruthless CEO the business world feared. My mother was the soul of this company. She kept my father human when success would have turned him into a monster. After she died, he married your mother for her money and gave you access to power you've spent 2 years trying to steal. Paolo's voice was quiet but lethal. But you made a mistake, Valentim. You threatened what's mine, and I don't forgive that. What I did, Valentim started, but Paolo cut him off. What you did was break into my private office, steal confidential personal information, use it to threaten a pregnant woman, and attempt to manipulate this board into removing me from leadership. Ms. Carvalho, please confirm that those actions constitute grounds for immediate removal from the board and potential criminal charges. The General Counsel nodded slowly. Corporate espionage, harassment, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Yes, those are all grounds for removal and criminal prosecution. Then I move for an immediate vote to remove Valentim Ferreira from the board and all company positions, effective immediately. Paolo's eyes never left his stepfather. All in favor? The vote was swift and unanimous. Even Henrik, seeing which way the wind was blowing, raised his hand. Valentim sat frozen, his carefully constructed plan crumbling around him. This isn't over, he hissed as security appeared to escort him out. You think you've won, but all you've done is prove you're your father's son. Ruthless, cold, willing to destroy anyone who gets in your way. That girl carrying your child will learn that soon enough. Get him out. Paolo didn't even look at Valentim as he was led away. His focus shifted to Vera, who'd gone pale and still. As for you, Ms. Santos, attempting to bribe Ms. Valentina to disappear could be considered coercion. My legal team will be in touch about your role in this scheme. I was just trying to help her, Vera protested weakly. To give her options. You were trying to help Valentim manipulate the situation. Paolo's voice was flat. You were engaged to me for 18 months, Vera. You should know by now that I protect what's mine, and anyone who threatens my family makes an enemy for life. Family. The word resonated through me, warm and terrifying. Vera fled the boardroom without another word, her designer heels clicking rapidly against the marble floor. When the door closed behind her, Paolo turned back to the remaining board members. I apologize for the dramatics, but I wanted this situation addressed clearly and publicly. Paloma Valentina is carrying my daughter. We're building a partnership to co-parent effectively. Her promotion to Chief of Staff is based on merit and eliminates any conflict of interest. If any of you have concerns about this arrangement, express them now. Ms. Carvalho spoke first. I have concerns about the optics, Paolo. Not the substance, but how this will be perceived externally. The press will have questions when they learn about the pregnancy and the promotion. Then we control the narrative. Paolo pulled out his phone. I'm releasing a statement this afternoon. Brief, factual, emphasizing that this is a private family matter being handled responsibly. Paloma and I will present a united front. The company will continue to operate exactly as it has been, because frankly, she's been running things more efficiently than my previous chief of staff anyway. A few chuckles around the table. The tension was easing, replaced by a cautious acceptance. I have one question. This from Carlos Pinto, the head of operations. What happens if your relationship with Ms. Valentina doesn't work out? If you two can't maintain a professional working relationship? Paulo glanced at me, and I saw vulnerability flash across his features before he answered. Then we'll handle it like adults. But I have faith that we're capable of building something lasting. Paloma has more integrity, intelligence, and strength than anyone I've ever met. Our daughter is lucky to have her as a mother, and I'm lucky she gave me a second chance to prove I could be worthy of being her father. The sincerity in his voice brought tears to my eyes. I blinked them back, focusing on maintaining my composure. Any other questions? Paulo looked around the table. When no one spoke, he nodded. Then I suggest we adjourn. Ms. Carvalho, please prepare the documentation for Valentim's removal and arrange for legal counsel regarding potential criminal charges. Henrik, I'll need a full audit of any projects Valentim had access to. The rest of you, business as usual. As the board members filed out, several stopped to offer quiet congratulations or support. Ms. Carvalho paused beside me. Congratulations on your pregnancy, Ms. Valentina, and on the promotion. You've earned it. She smiled. Though I suspect the next few months will be challenging, balancing a new position and preparing for motherhood. I'm used to challenging, I replied, meaning it. When we were finally alone, Paulo turned to me. Are you all right? I think so. I sank into the nearest chair, adrenaline fading and leaving exhaustion in its wake. That was brutal. I know. I'm sorry you had to endure Vera's accusations. Were they true? About pursuing her when she worked for you? Paulo sat beside me, his expression troubled. She worked for an agency we contracted. We met at a project meeting. I was attracted to her, yes, but I didn't pursue her until after her company's contract ended, and she'd moved to a different firm. The relationship was consensual and appropriate, but she's chosen to reframe it now to serve Valentim's agenda. And the gifts? The promotions? I gave her gifts when we were engaged. Yes. As for promotions, she was talented at her job. Any advancement she received was earned. He reached for my hand. But I understand why you're asking. Trust has to be rebuilt between us. Yes, it does. I didn't pull away from his touch. But what you did today, standing up for me, for Vittoria, that meant something. I meant every word. His thumb traced circles on my palm. You and our daughter are my priority. The company is important, but you're irreplaceable. I wanted to believe him. And watching him systematically dismantle Valentim's schemes, seeing him publicly claim me and our daughter despite the professional risks, made it easier to hope. Take me home? I asked softly. Which home? Your apartment or... Yours. I want to listen to your mother's records and hear you tell me more about her, about who you are when you're not being the CEO. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. I'd like that. As we left the boardroom, his hand found the small of my back again. The gesture was becoming familiar, comfortable, a promise of protection and partnership. Valentim was gone. Vera was exposed. The board knew the truth. We'd survived the fire. Now came the harder part, building something real from the ashes. The weeks following the board meeting settled into a rhythm I hadn't anticipated. My new role as chief of staff kept me busy, but fulfilled, coordinating between departments and managing projects that actually challenged my abilities. Paulo and I maintained professional boundaries during work hours, but evenings found us together more often than not, sharing meals and conversation in one apartment or the other. We were learning each other slowly, carefully. I discovered he was obsessive about morning routines, that he couldn't sleep without white noise, that he had a weakness for terrible action movies he'd never admit to enjoying. He learned that I stress-baked at midnight, that I'd memorized entire scenes from classic films in Portuguese and English, that I sang to Vittoria when I thought no one could hear. It wasn't love. Not yet. but it was foundation building, brick by careful brick. I was 6 months pregnant now, visibly showing, feeling Vittoria's movements grow stronger each day. Paolo had accompanied me to every appointment, his wonder at each ultrasound image never fading. He'd converted the second bedroom in my apartment into a nursery, insisting on hiring a designer, and then vetoing every suggestion that felt too impersonal. "She needs to know this is home," he'd said, studying paint swatches with an intensity usually reserved for merger negotiations. Not just some generic baby room. We'd settled on soft sage-green walls with hand-painted clouds, furniture that Paolo had commissioned from a local artisan, a rocking chair that had belonged to his mother. The space was becoming real, tangible, a place where our daughter would sleep and grow and learn who she was. Teresa visited often, bringing magazines and baby clothes and unsolicited advice with equal enthusiasm. "You two are disgustingly functional for people who started this whole thing backwards," she observed one evening, watching Paolo assemble a crib with focused determination. "We're practical people," I replied, folding tiny onesies that still seemed impossibly small. "You're cowards." Teresa's voice was gentle but firm. "Both of you dancing around what's actually happening here. What's happening here is co-parenting." Paolo didn't look up from the instruction manual. "Right. Co-parenting that includes daily dinners, shared movie nights, him keeping your favorite tea stocked in his kitchen." Teresa counted on her fingers. "Shall I continue?" "Teresa." My warning tone lacked conviction. "I'm just saying, at some point you both need to admit this is more than a partnership for Vittoria's sake." She stood, gathering her purse. "But what do I know? I've only been watching you two make eyes at each other for 3 years." After she left, the silence felt heavy. Paolo finished securing the crib's final bolt, then straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. He'd ditched the suits for casual clothes tonight, and the domesticity of it made my heart ache. "She's not entirely wrong," he said quietly. About this being more than co-parenting." He moved closer, careful as always not to crowd me. "I told you I wanted to take you to dinner. A real date. I meant it. We have dinner together every night. Here, yes. In comfort clothes, discussing our days." He smiled slightly. "I want to take you somewhere beautiful. Dress up. Pretend for a few hours that we're just two people getting to know each other, not two people navigating pregnancy and corporate politics." The offer was tempting and terrifying in equal measure. "Paolo, I'm 6 months pregnant. I'm not exactly date-appropriate right now. You're carrying my daughter. That makes you perfect." His hand rose to cup my face. "Say yes. Paloma, let me court you properly this time." "Court me?" I couldn't help laughing. Who even uses that word anymore? "I do, because what we're building deserves old-fashioned romance along with modern partnership." His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "Please?" I should have said no. Should have maintained the careful boundaries we'd established. But looking into his eyes, seeing genuine hope there, I found myself nodding. "One date, but nothing too fancy. These ankles don't handle heels well anymore. Leave it to me." His smile was brilliant. Saturday night, 7 o'clock. Saturday arrived with the kind of nervous excitement I hadn't felt since I was a teenager. Teresa had insisted on helping me get ready, appearing at my door with a garment bag and makeup kit. "You didn't actually think I'd miss this, did you?" She pushed past me into the apartment. "Your first official date with the father of your child? I've been waiting months for this moment." The dress she'd brought was perfect. Deep emerald silk that skimmed my curves without clinging. Elegant and comfortable with a neckline that made me feel beautiful rather than exposed. She styled my hair in loose waves, kept my makeup natural but polished. "You look stunning," she pronounced when she'd finished. "He's going to lose his mind." I studied myself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman who looked back. Pregnancy had changed my body in ways I was still adjusting to, but tonight I looked like someone who belonged in Paolo's world. Confident, sophisticated, ready. The knock came precisely at 7. I opened the door to find Paolo in a charcoal suit I'd never seen before, holding a bouquet of peonies, my favorite flower. His eyes widened when he saw me. "You're beautiful." His voice was rough with emotion. "You've always been beautiful. But tonight you're pregnant and swollen in fancy dress." I tried for humor. "Radiant." He handed me the flowers. "These are for you, shall we?" The car wasn't his usual town car, but something smaller, more intimate. He drove himself, taking us not into the city, but out toward the coast. I watched the buildings give way to trees, the urban landscape softening into something more natural. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." His hand found mine on the center console. "Trust me?" I did, I realized. Somewhere between the board meeting and tonight, trust had taken root. We arrived at a restaurant I'd only seen in magazines, a converted lighthouse on a private stretch of beach, elegant and secluded. Paolo had reserved the entire upper floor, just for us. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the ocean, the setting sun painting the water in shades of gold and pink. "Paolo, this is too much." "It's exactly enough." He pulled out my chair. "I wanted somewhere we could talk without interruption, where you could relax without worrying about who might be watching or listening." The meal was extraordinary, each course perfectly prepared and paced to allow for conversation. We talked about everything and nothing: childhood memories, favorite books, dreams we'd abandoned and ones we still held close. "I wanted to be a teacher," I admitted over dessert. "Before my parents died, I was going to get my degree, work with elementary students. I loved the idea of shaping young minds." "You still could." Paolo's expression was thoughtful. "After Vittoria is born, if you wanted. The chief of staff position is a job. Important, yes, but not your entire identity." He reached across the table for my hand. "I don't want you to give up your dreams for me or the company. I want to help you achieve them." The sincerity in his voice made my throat tight. "What about your dreams? What did you want before the company consumed everything?" He was quiet for a moment, staring out at the darkening ocean. "I wanted a family. Not the broken one I grew up in, but something real. Parents who actually loved each other. Children who felt safe and wanted." He looked back at me. "I spent so long focused on building the company that I forgot what I was building it for. And now I know." His grip on my hand tightened. "I'm building it for Vittoria. For you. For the family we could be if you'll let us try." The vulnerability in his admission cracked something open in my chest. "Paolo, I love you." The words rushed out like he couldn't contain them anymore. "I've been in love with you since that December night. Maybe before. I was just too much of a coward to admit it. Too afraid of ruining what we had professionally. Too convinced I didn't deserve happiness after how I'd treated people in pursuit of success." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "You can't just say that." "Why not? It's true." He came around the table, kneeling beside my chair. "I love how you make lists for everything. How you hum when you're concentrating. How you've memorized my coffee order and my schedule and the names of everyone who works on our floor. I love your strength and your kindness, and the way you've built a life for yourself despite every obstacle. I love who I am when I'm with you. Better, softer, more human. I'm scared." The admission was barely a whisper. Of trusting this. Of believing it's real. So am I. He took both my hands. "But I'm more scared of losing you because I was too afraid to fight for us. Paloma, I know I've made mistakes. I know I hurt you that morning after, and I'll spend the rest of my life making up for it if you'll let me. But I need you to know. This isn't about obligation or the baby. This is about you. About us. About building something real." I looked down at him. This powerful man who'd dismantled his stepfather's schemes and reorganized his entire life around our daughter, now kneeling before me with his heart in his hands. I love you too. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. I've been fighting it for months because it was safer to believe you were just being responsible. But the truth is, I fell for you that December night, and I never stopped falling. His smile was radiant. Then marry me. My heart stopped. What? Marry me. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, an emerald surrounded by diamonds, classic and stunning. Not because you're pregnant or because it would be practical. Marry me because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life earning your trust and making you happy. Paolo, we've only been really together for a few months. I've known you for 3 years. I've loved you for at least 1. And I've spent the last few months learning that you're even more extraordinary than I imagined. He slipped the ring onto my finger. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm asking you to say yes to a future together. To building a family not out of obligation, but out of choice. The ring fit perfectly, the emerald catching the candlelight. It matches the dress. I had Teresa send me a photo. His smile was sheepish. I've been planning this proposal for weeks. Wanted everything to be perfect. I started laughing through my tears. You coordinated with my best friend? I wanted to get it right this time. He stood, pulling me gently to my feet. So, will you marry me, Paloma Valentina? Will you let me be your partner in everything, not just parenting? I should have taken time to think, should have been practical and cautious. Instead, I threw my arms around his neck and kissed him with everything I'd been holding back. Yes, I whispered against his lips. Yes to all of it. His kiss deepened, tender and passionate, a promise of everything we were building together. When we finally pulled apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I'm going to make you so happy. You already do. I took his hand and placed it over my belly, where Vittoria was doing her usual evening acrobatics. We both do. We stayed at the lighthouse until late, talking and planning and dreaming about the future.
Paolo wanted a small wedding, just close friends and family. I wanted Vittoria to be part of it, old enough to remember. We compromised on a courthouse ceremony soon, with a larger celebration after our daughter was born. I want her to know from the beginning that we're a family, Paolo explained. That her parents chose each other. As we drove home, my hand in his, the engagement ring catching every streetlight, I felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Certainty. The knowledge that this complicated, messy, backwards beginning had led us exactly where we needed to be. 2 months later, I woke to cramping that quickly intensified into unmistakable labor. Paolo, true to form, had a hospital bag packed and the car waiting before I'd even finished timing contractions. It's too early, I gasped as another wave of pain hit. I'm only 8 months. Dr. Carvalho said 36 weeks was safe. His voice was calm, but I saw the fear in his eyes. Vittoria's just eager to meet us. The labor was long and complicated. What started as routine quickly escalated when Vittoria's heart rate dropped. Emergency cesarean, the doctor said. Necessary for the baby's safety. I remembered very little of the surgery. Bright lights, urgent voices, Paolo's hand gripping mine as anesthesia pulled me under. When I woke hours later, groggy and disoriented, the first thing I saw was Paolo's face, tear-streaked and exhausted. She's perfect, he whispered. Our daughter is absolutely perfect. Small but healthy. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and her mother's beautiful eyes. Where is she? NICU, just for observation since she's a bit early, but the doctors say she's strong. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. You scared me. There were complications. They said... His voice broke. I almost lost you both. But you didn't.
I touched his face. We're both here. We're both fine. I love you. He said it like a prayer. I love you so much, Paloma. When they took you into surgery, I realized that all the power and money and success in the world meant nothing if I lost you. You're stuck with me now. I tried to smile through the exhaustion. Married and everything. No backing out. We'd gotten married 3 days earlier. A quiet courthouse ceremony with Teresa and Ms. Carvalho as witnesses. Simple and perfect. Exactly what we'd wanted. Never. He kissed me gently. Ready to meet our daughter? They brought her to me in a clear bassinet, tiny and perfect and impossibly beautiful. Vittoria Paulo Simues, all 5 pounds of her, with dark hair and her father's serious expression. When I held her for the first time, something fundamental shifted in the universe. This was what mattered. This tiny person, this family we'd created against all odds. Paulo sat beside us, his arm around my shoulders, staring at our daughter with unconcealed wonder. She's so small. She's perfect. I touched her impossibly tiny fingers. Absolutely perfect. 3 months later, we stood in the Sinews Industries building lobby, Paulo addressing a crowd of employees gathered for the dedication of a new on-site childcare center. Vittoria slept in my arms, oblivious to the significance of the moment. This facility represents a commitment, Paulo was saying, his voice carrying across the space. A commitment to supporting working parents, to acknowledging that family and career shouldn't be competing priorities, but complementary ones. He paused, his eyes finding mine in the crowd. I learned that from the woman standing beside me. She taught me that strength isn't just about building empires, but about being present for the people we love. That success isn't measured in quarterly profits, but in the moments we create together. Then, to my shock, he stepped away from the podium and knelt before me, in front of hundreds of employees. Paloma, you've already said yes to marrying me. But today, I want to ask something else. His voice was thick with emotion. Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that choosing us was the right decision? Will you be my partner in all things, raising our daughter and any future children? Building not just a company but a legacy of love? Tears streamed down my face as I knelt beside him. Vittoria still cradled safely between us. You already are proving it. Every single day. He kissed me then, gentle and full of promise, while our daughter slept on, and employees applauded and cameras flashed. It wasn't perfect. We still had disagreements and challenges and moments of doubt. But it was real, built on honesty and partnership and love that had grown from the most unlikely beginning. That night, after Vittoria was asleep in her nursery, and we were curled together on the couch with a record playing softly, Paulo pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Updating my emergency contacts. He showed me the screen. Where it had once listed only business associates, now it read, Paloma Simos, wife, partner, love of my life. You're impossibly sentimental. Only for you. He kissed my temple. Only for our family. And as Ella Fitzgerald sang about love and moonlight, I realized we'd done something remarkable. We'd taken a mistake, a complication, an ultrasound hidden in a drawer, and transformed it into something beautiful. A family, a partnership, a love story that started backwards but ended up exactly right.